Okay, and then one in the middle.
I don't think so.
Here. What I'm gonna do is.
Okay.
But
Right. I think that matches the other side.
Jennifer, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you.
Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and share the screen with you as well.
Okay.
There we go. All right, you got it?
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
All right, I have 6:45. I'll call the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for August 13th, 2024. Will everyone please rise and pledge allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is roll call. Sergio, would you please call roll?
Mr. Hemingway.
Here.
Ms. Jones.
Here.
Ms. Mayor.
Here.
Mr. Pulaski is not in, staying, Sherman Rappin,
Here.
and Councilman Liaison, Mr. Pierce.
Here. Next item is the approval of minutes from July 9th, 2024. The minutes have been presented. Has everyone a chance to review? If so, what is the pleasure of the board?
Sure, I'd like to make the motion to accept the minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll say.
Any discussion? Being none, Sergio, would you please call roll?
Mr. Hemingway.
Yes.
Ms. Johns.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Ms. Mayor.
Yes.
Mr. Pulaski is not in, and Sherman Rappin.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is preliminary hearings. We have BZA 24004, Developmental Standards Variance. Dr. Merhart for maximum rehabilitation services is requesting a variance from table 266701B, wall sign standards description to install a wall sign along drive aisle facade, north side of building located 8220 Calumet Avenue, Suite B. Sergio, I'll turn this over to staff, you and Jen, for a presentation.
Sure, absolutely. What we could do is go ahead and turn it over to Jennifer. She's been intimately involved with this project. And she can give us a briefing on the staff report, and then allow the applicant to follow up with any additional information.
Thank you. Floor is yours, Jennifer.
Good evening, everyone. The tenant is wishing to put up an additional wall sign. So this is the property here along Calumet Avenue. The wall sign would be on the north end of the building, which faces the parking lot. So here's a better perspective of that. The front wall sign, I guess along Calumet would remain there, as well as the small wall sign outlined in green over the back tenant's entrance door, and there is some door signs as well. The next image is from 2015, when this was all, I believe, one tenant space. Sergio, correct me if I'm wrong. And that's when a wall sign existed in approximately the area they're proposing now. If you go down some more, there you go. So this is just more a detail of what we're seeing. This sign that we have the specs for doesn't comply with the sign ordinance, but Nicole on staff has spoken with the applicant, and he plans to comply with the overall size. Everything along those lines. It's just the location. So I do want to clarify that this sign wouldn't be over the tenant space. It would be over the front tenant space, which is roughly the line. It's hard to tell. Like if you follow the word lot down on the site plan, you can kind of see that line of where the tenant space breaks up from the building. And again, we have a couple different standards here that talks about where a sign can be placed on the wall. I think you have 2 different places in your ordinance that does not permit that wall sign not over the tenant space itself.
Jennifer is also code, I believe, Sergeant and I were talking before the meeting, that does not allow multiple signs on this building, since it's on the frontage road of Calumet Avenue.
Correct. Mhm.
Was that drawing over the window, do you know if that was to scale?
Like this drawing, sorry.
On an actual sign above it, right there.
Yeah, I think, but like I said, this sign, the dimensions they show on there, it's actually too large.
Yeah, they had it almost 11 feet long on that sign.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that's the big thing to consider. One, it's multiple wall signs, but it's also not over the tenant space itself, which I believe is, in my opinion, the more concerning item here for the board to consider.
Wall, it's 3 feet tall. That's a pretty big sign, 3 feet by 11 feet too.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we've advised the applicant that what he submitted based on his application does not comply. He indicated that we will comply with the current sign code. But we have not received that updated information. So what you see presently is what is not compliant, and he would require another variance if he decides to move forward with this.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
so what size sign are they allowed?
We have not received that information based on.
No, I mean by code, whatever.
By
what
code,
size?
1.5 times the frontage on that, so whatever the frontage is on that,
On that side of the building?
correct. That's what they're asking for the variance, so once they receive the variance, then they would have to comply with that.
So that would be an additional sign on the same side of the building,
Correct,
is what they're asking.
yes.
But technically, for the building facing the Calumet, the other 3 sides of the building are not allowed to have a sign.
Right.
Anyone else have any questions for staff? Is there someone here on behalf of petitioner who'd like to come up to the podium and speak? Being none, bring it back to the board. This is a preliminary hearing. They're asking to set for public hearing. We still don't have all the information regarding what size of sign they propose. So is that something we should look at tabling until they present the sign or?
The board has the pleasure of tabling, deferring this for another month until they comply or at least bring in the additional information requested. Particularly the appropriate or the acceptable sign size, also would have to file for another variance, developmental standard variance on that end. Also, code enforcement wanted me to share that the site is also in violation currently with a sidewalk sign that does not comply, and a movable sign on a vehicle wrap should not be located currently where it is. So there's currently some violation issues that we notified the property owner, and as of this morning, I understand is not compliant with. So, if chooses they can defer this matter, and you advise the applicant.
My recommendation would be to table this matter until items are addressed and we have the right presentation in front of the board to consider a separate public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to table this. The next one.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? That being said, Sergio, would you please call roll?
Mr. Hemingway,
Yes.
Ms. Johns,
Yes.
Ms. Mayor,
Yes.
Chairman Rathman.
Yes. Thank you, Sergio. Next item on the agenda for preliminary hearings is BZA 24008, Developmental Standards Variance, Eric Stojkovic with E, S, and F, and Chad Groen with Groen Landscape representing Steve Westerberg, residential property owner, are requesting a variance for table 26-6 405A2 district standards lot application to construct a 4,050 square foot, 45 by 90 accessory structure to enclose an existing sports court at 10125. It's a mouthful. George, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, I will give a briefing as much as I can, and then I'll turn it over to Jennifer. My understanding is that there is an existing sports court on this property. It initially started as four separate lots of record, and then were combined into one. A sports court is permitted, and now what they'd like to do is enclose that sports court and identify it as an accessory structure. And so they are here now asking for a variance to exceed the permitted square footage of 900 square feet to enclose the sports court. My understanding is that the square footage may have changed slightly, reduced a little bit, but that information was not received in the time that we were able to update some of these documents. But my understanding is that it is somewhat smaller based on the information that they're wanting to provide to us. So I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Sergio. Jennifer, floor is yours.
Yeah, so echoing everything Sergio said, this was, 4 different lots at one point. You see the sports court, the existing sports court that's outlined in red. They would basically enclose that very similar to the same footprints. And then here's some images of that. I'd say overall, my biggest concern is they do have a large easement that dissects their property, and we want to make sure this building stays outside of that easement. Overall, I think they can meet most of the development standards. So I think it's just a matter of, is a structure this big, does it really fit in with that community character and work overall for the whole neighborhood?
I think the one outline question maybe that came from staff was determination or confirmation on the exact height. If not, another variance would be sought based on the size of that structure. They indicate that they will comply with the height, which is 16 feet. But we just need confirmation on that. It's a little unclear in the documents that we'll provide.
Thank you, Sergio. Does anyone have any questions for staff? Being none, is someone here to speak on behalf of the petitioner or like to say anything?
Probably all three of us.
All right, step on up to the microphone. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
All right.
We build that up. Eric Stojkovic, 214 Salisbury Drive, Wesley. First of all, we should associate myself with Stojkovic Incorporated. ESNF is a different entity. So that probably came through on an email, let's say, because licensed within the town of Munster for residential construction and jobs like this is Stojkovic Incorporated. The size did come down a little bit, and that's due to, was it the setbacks?
Yes, we're within.
We had to squeeze it a little bit to get within the setbacks. So I think it's down to 88.
It's 3,800 square feet right now. It was 4,100, I think.
And the height, we would love to go higher than 16, but I don't know that we'll be allowed to do that. Is that correct?
Well, that'd be a variance if you want it.
Because the whole, if you could picture a basketball court, we're proposing a 12-foot sidewall. We're gonna have to have a steep pitch to get that sucker to climb because, of course, arcing a basketball, to be capped at 16, they'll be just bouncing balls off the ceiling, I feel. But if we can't get higher than 16, we'll work with 16, I guess.
Well, make it 9 feet. No one can dunk in one.
I know I can't. Is there any questions for me?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Ms. Mayor.
Mr. Stojkovich, is this structure gonna be heated?
We did talk about two, let's say, gas fire units.
Okay, and this is an existing concrete pad that was poured for the sports court?
Right.
Does it have a foundation wall going around it?
No, it does not. We would be adding that with the project.
We would what?
We would add the structural perimeter. So that was that's just the floating slab right now?
So you would add a foundation around the perimeter?
We would.
And so what's the structure is going to be to make that ridge line? How are you going to do that?
It would probably be a truss roof.
But how are you going to have trusses in a basketball court?
Well, it would be, let's say like a two-tiered system, your actual roof above and then a shallow pitch for the ceiling below. Or it could just be the roof could act as the interior cathedral ceiling. One of two ways.
So like rafters?
Right.
Truss
Right.
rafters? Okay.
Blue lamp beams would be cool.
Decorating, yeah. Not white and blue.
Any other questions, Mary?
That's a terminal.
Eric, Jennifer brought up the building being on an easement, or that's been all changed due to
No,
size.
we've got it all, it's all.
It's all within, so it's not an easement anymore.
Make it smaller.
Okay. Eric being a Westlake community member, obviously this is not a normal building and not only Westlake,
Understood.
but the town of Munster, obviously. I know Westlake has a homeowner association. I'm not sure how strong or how often they meet, or if they meet, or if there's even one still organized. Like
Not that I'm
otherwise,
aware of. I think
Right.
Williamson let that go by the wayside long ago.
you know, obviously put one of these up in a neighborhood like yours, obviously you live there. Kind of feedback you think you're gonna get, just curious regarding.
I think with what the homeowner is willing to make this look like and spend on this, I think it would be greatly appreciated, I think.
I mean, you're a resident of that part of
I am.
town, so I know you know a lot of people in that
Yeah.
area and that subdivision being there as long as you have been, you know. So obviously it'd be good to have some feelers out there before it hits the public meeting, so.
Sure.
You got a consensus and neighbors, you know, so in a room full of people next month saying, what are we building in
Right.
Westlake, right? So.
Mr. Chairman, is this gonna go before the plan commission for site, review for the materials?
I don't know if residential ever goes in front of the plan commission. It's
No.
commercial, industrial, not residential.
So,
That would be mostly a Westlake thing, and make sure it meets your, you know, codes and covenants in Westlake, so that you could build, I don't know what your brick requirement is, or
Oh.
metal
Well-
roofs or anything else, you know?
Long ago it was 30%, but look across from me is all cedar siding, so yeah, everything went by the wayside in terms of rules.
their submission says, that it could be either metal or LP siding above the brick. So do we, want to make some consideration on that?
My opinion is if you look at, and I don't know, the gentleman holds this lot, but when you look at the house and the 4 lots it's on, I would think that they're gonna probably make this the nicest looking basketball court.
Precisely.
Around, I'm guessing. I don't think there's gonna be any corners cut.
No.
Materials and making sure, I would guess it's architecturally appeasing for your residents, that's all I would guess.
Well, yeah, I would imagine so too,
Right.
but I mean, the metal siding, I mean, we're back into a look of a
Pole barn,
full barn. Exactly.
Mr. Chairman, I think that this is great to improve the property value of not only this home, but everything around it. My biggest concern would be the roof height, you know, with the neighbors and being appropriate for the neighborhood. I see your
Did you see-
objective is the roof
Roof
height. I see your objective in, you know, wanting to play ball. I don't know if you can we open it?
Retractable roof,
I mean-
a couple bucks.
But that's where I see you getting the biggest pushback is in that height. That's what I.
Did you hear the homeowner, Mr. Westerberg? He is
It's
saying,
fine if that's a problem.
I'm just saying
Pickleball
that's
than
fine.
basketball anyway.
Well, if you'll teach me how to play pickleball,
It's all pickleball these days.
You don't know what you're missing?
All right,
it's on my list.
any other questions for petitioner?
So they're asking for 23 feet high. Our code is 16.
I'm sorry, no, the application that was filed was for the square footage, not for the height.
So are we looking at a separate variance
If
request?
they're asking for variance height, then we would include that as part of the public hearing for next month. But as of right now, what was filed was just the square footage of the accessory structure,
And what's the maximum height by code?
16 feet.
16 feet. So are you asking for higher than 16
Nope.
or not?
We are not.
Okay.
Mr. Listerberg, the homeowner, is fine with 16. So for ease of matter, we'll leave it at 16.
And you're not looking at changing that design to like a mansard style? It would be the style that's shown?
Not a straight gable like that, no. That would be a flattened off.
So it would be flattened off, so.
It would look like a
It's not
mansard.
gonna look exactly like that.
A
like
gambrel.
screen.
Your pitch and then a flat. Boom, boom.
So for next month's meeting, we should have drawings that reflect what it is gonna look like exactly.
Okay?
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to set this for public hearing.
Well, real quick. You got anything?
No, I mean, easier than I thought.
She, you want to talk?
No, I got nothing.
All good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that being said, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any other further discussion? No other discussion. Sergio, please call roll.
Mr. Hemingway,
Yes,
Ms. Johns,
Yeah,
Ms. Mayor,
Yes,
and Chairman Rappin.
Yes. Eric, please work with Sergio and staff regarding getting all the public notices out for notification. So you need
Sure.
requirements for next meeting.
Very good, thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is public hearings. It's BZA 24006, developmental standard variance, Christie Carson Reuter with Region Contracts. Requesting the multiple development standards from 266405A7 to include building setback on existing building, building composition, building material, frontage build out, entrances, blank walls, facade openings from 11,476 square foot addition to an existing 4,918 square foot building. That being said, Sergio, I'll turn it over to you and Jennifer.
I would just go ahead and add that the applicant here is looking to do an addition to an existing structure. The proposed variances that they're requesting are to extend or complement the existing structure. And so they're asking for these sets of variances. I will go ahead and turn it over to Jennifer in case she would like to add anything else to that. Hello?
Sorry, I muted myself.
Sorry.
The property is in red here and they're expanding to the south, their footprint, along with parking as well. So they'll need a couple different variances to make that happen. You'll see here on this floor plan, they're adding 4 different units. So it's kind of an open space, an office. They each have their own mechanicals. The AC units are on the east side of the building, kind of on the top of this image. They are adding the parking, you got the ADA parking, and then the dumpster is the furthest to the south. They'll have a dumpster enclosure to serve those units. So the staff report does detail which variances would be needed to meet the standards. They have said, you know, lighting, I don't think we have a detailed lighting, but they did say they would, you know, meet code with that. There's not much landscaping they would need to do other than the parking lot. So overall, what these plans have is really what you're going to see being built.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anyone have any questions for staff? None? That being said, if there's someone that would like to speak on behalf of the petitioner, please state your name and address for the record.
Nick Georgiou, Region Contractor, 912 West Avenue H, Griffith, Indiana, representing the owner of 620 Progress LLC. Even though there are multiple variances submitted in this developmental variances, this is a two-part submittal. It's the developmental variant part. All but two of those are associated with bringing the existing building into current conformance with the zoning code, because the zoning code changed from what the original property was back in the business park. Without rattling them off individually, frontage, because where the building is, it sits too far in the front. It has a solid front, the entrance isn't on the front, the signage is on the side. It has metal siding, which is now not allowed. So like I said, virtually all the variances are, most of them except two, are to basically bring the existing building in conformance with the current code. The two items that are identified, which affect both the addition and the existing, is metal siding to be allowed for the addition, which also exists on the existing building. The other item, which is we discussed and it's still in our request, is that to waive the requirement for a sidewalk on the street. Subsequent to our last meeting, I've done extensive walking up and down areas. Both the adjacent properties that berm the properties near the parkway, there's mature trees almost literally in the parkway. We're still requesting consideration to waive the sidewalk, which would be applicable to the project in particular. Relative to the comments Jennifer made, which we would address subsequent, so if we're successful in this meeting, we do have photometrics, landscaping, et cetera. That's all been addressed in the Plan Commission submittal, which follows this meeting. So we go forward from this meeting going forward. That's my initials. So if you have any questions.
I have a question. Mr. Whitman, why is the building materials coming in front of the BZA instead of the Plan Commission? That's another jurisdictional body that deals with the actual plans.
And my understanding is that's the way it was originally set up.
Because I thought in the past that Plan Commission strictly handled that and some of those items.
I'm not aware of that. My understanding is that the Board of Zoning Appeals grants variances from codes within the zoning code. I'm not aware, I mean, we can double check that and confirm that, but variances from building materials that are in the zoning code, I've not seen they go before the Plan Commission, but we can confirm that with the under the current zoning.
Because I thought a lot of the developmental standards when it came to materials went through the Plan Commission.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that.
I'll follow up with that too.
I can try to answer that. With the Unified Development Ordinance that you have, waivers can only be granted through the subdivision process. So anything else are considered development standards and they would go before the BZA.
Thank you, Jennifer. I have some questions. Obviously, you're asking for a variance on siding. And for your building, it seemed like you tried to add every square footage of siding and very minimum of brick. I'm just curious why we weren't running the brick up on the rest of the building up to the kind of almost the parapet top and keeping it low. I know it's cost, you want to do it as cheap as possible, and that's, you know, as a builder, I understand that. But when I'm looking at this, you have brick higher, that I don't understand why we didn't run the brick to the same kind of look up to the top part, the top third of the building, to kind of blend it in instead of just throwing as much siding and make this thing look as much of a warehouse in Munster as possible in an area that you're asking for a warehouse variance.
Two comments I want to clarify. I understand that the base building, I believe, is approximately 8 foot high on the brick on the west facade. We are showing a brick wainscot on the west facade. The remainder of that is actually not shown as brick, and I need to clarify that. I would understand your request on the west elevation about making it consistent terms of raising the brick on the west elevation. I believe our client would be amenable to that.
Because even when I'm looking at the south elevation, if I was a doctor office, I want to put a high-end office building behind you. The last thing I want to look at is a big roof that's all siding on the south side, right? You know what I'm saying?
I know you're
If
saying,
I'm
I
gonna
know.
invest in there in medical or whatever, which is probably mostly likely it's gonna be the rest of it. I'm gonna look out my back of my building and see a pole barn, right?
It won't look exactly like that, but I understand your comment. I know that the Bowman manufacturing facility is 100% sided on the backside on the south elevation. So
Well, that, and I've had this discussion, sins of the past, like sidewalks and everything, are things for the future, right?
okay,
You know. We used to have car lots in town, and we used to have other things, right? And then kind of readjust codes and stuff like that. I'm just putting some stuff out there because obviously the longevity of having brick on there compared to a siding product that's got 20 years shelf life or whatever before it rusts out, or your galvanization, your coating and everything else is, you know,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
so there are no windows in this addition, correct?
correct, other than I've tried vision in the man doors that exist or the service doors on that particular site. The code requires us to have a door and or opening every 20 feet, which we, in this case, it's meant with doors more than anything versus windows. Part of that obviously would be some security concern with whatever tenants are in there relative to having windows.
Right, but I mean, generally in buildings of that type, you would at least have the light panels at the top of the wall, something to break up the industrial look of it.
I'm making notes.
Okay, is that a pre-engineered building?
Yeah, whether it be steel or post framed, it's a pre-manufactured building, that's customized application. The other option, well, again, looking around seeing the owner present, which is not, so I can't commit. But on a lot of these buildings, we actually have done clear story windows. You know,
Yes.
like 2 foot by 4 foot at each of the tenant spaces. You know, one that gives daylight within the occupants, within the space. It also enhances the appearance of the building house. This is, although it wasn't clearly shown, I don't know if you can go back to the elevations. I know it's the planning commission side of it. Unfortunately, it's not very clear here, but there's signs shown because we had to do that on the planning commission. But there's actually 4 individual signs that meet the criteria of the square footage. So there will be technically 4 signs if there's 4 tenants plus the main tenant. And then you can look at the transom windows that you're discussing.
Any other opinions? I would encourage you to run your brick up to that lower level to kind of blend in the higher part of the siding, even though it's a little bit higher on that side. To kind of blend it in to make it look a little nicer. And if you're talking security, brick is a lot more secure than that kind of siding, and the maintenance on the long run is better. Not
Understood.
sidewalks, I don't have a problem with the sidewalk. I would just, as a note, I would put it in there that once the sidewalks are built by you, next year, because our goal is to get sidewalks in every subdivision, every business corridor, but when the sidewalks go in adjacent to you, that the owner would have to put the sidewalk in at that time.
We accept that condition also.
Landscaping, I haven't seen the landscaping plan. We'll look at that later on, because right now I think you just got a bunch of overgrown evergreens that's not
Very
there.
large arborvitae.
Yeah, that are as tall as the building. So. Any other thoughts before this is a public hearing? Uh, any other thoughts before we open this up to the public?
I concur on your thought about the brick uniformity on that.
We just soften up the building.
Okay. Understood.
Any other questions?
No,
That being said, I'll have you take a seat, please, and we will open this up for a public hearing. This is a public hearing for BZA 24006 for a developmental standard variance. These developmental standards, like I mentioned before, are from 266405A7, include building setback from existing building, building composition, which was the materials we talked about, building material, frontage build out, entrances, blank walls, and facade openings for 11,476 addition to an existing 4,918 square foot building. That being said, is there anyone here on behalf of the public that would like to come up and speak on this petition? Please come up here and state your name and address for record, please.
Hi, I'm Hallie Webster. I own the adjacent property at 616 Progress Avenue. Our biggest concern is on the parking and traffic that having 4 tenants next to us could be. Additionally, would like to highlight that we'll be the only property owners that have parking adjacent to the building that isn't owned by us, whereas the other properties along Progress that have that adjacent parking are with that particular building. And also concerned at the semi-traffic that already exists on Progress. So currently at our property, the semis tend to sit right there, and it's very dangerous for cars going back and forth, whether it's waiting to get into a different warehouse, and we're talking about putting 4 in. Also, it looks like that parking lot variance is only about 45 feet long, where an average semi, which understand these are smaller, but who knows what delivery trucks will be going in. An average semi is 72 feet. So with only that 15 feet going up to our building, what is that gonna do? We wanna just protect our actual property to make sure that we're not gonna have any damage, whether that's through landscaping, higher curbs, berms. I'm not sure what that'll look like, and if you guys have already said that's coming. But I would say those are our biggest concerns, having this next door to the building. I would also like to specify we're not a warehouse use property. The tenants there are indoor golf training facility. So that like is more of a retail style use. So having those extra big trucks coming through right next door is quite different than when we purchased the building and got those tenants in about a year ago.
So you're right to the east of, west of the building,
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
So I'm the property that the parking will be run along.
Yeah, just to the west of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and so right now it's very tight between the front 2 parking lots. And then there is a little bit more setback as it goes down the property line. But there is like a high level of concern in terms of the safety that could be coming in and out of that from a traffic perspective, given all the other semis that are already heavily on that street.
Duly noted.
So those are our major issues, just in terms of the warehouse nature. Any questions?
No, thank you. Thank you for your time coming today.
Thank you.
Right.
Sergi, I know this is pretty obvious, kind of vague when I saw the applications petition. You know, we don't know the uses of it right now. Staff recommended, obviously, whenever these units become occupied, that they would have to meet the parking requirements based on the 4 units that are being presented within here, right? And I don't know what you have currently in here parking wise. Is it figured for worst case scenario parking wise for each tenant, like high use medical, or is it?
It is currently figured for light industrial uses, warehouse use.
Which is pretty light,
Correct,
right? So if I put 4 dentist office in there, you would never have enough parking,
correct.
correct? So how are we handling what tenants go in here regarding parking? So if the highest use uses the first unit and there's no other parking available except for the street, how do we protect an adjacent property from having parking issues down the road based on use of 4 tenants being put in there?
Under your, the next application, under use variances, you can add a condition, and I think there was a recommendation on the staff report that encouraged a condition to identify that the uses be maintained strictly for light industrial or the industrial uses that are permitted under that, for that parking, use of parking. Because there are also the variance that following this is for office use as well. So there are permitted uses within that type of zone classification that would meet those parking requirements.
And then zoning and obviously light industrial, what happens if I want to move my construction company in here, but everything doesn't fit in the building and I want to have every truck parked here, or my concrete forms, or my crane outside, how do we address like storage and use on their properties? Is everything stored inside the building? Are we using that for parking for equipment if it becomes in dumpsters? Are we putting scrap metal hoppers outside? What are we doing when we zone it for light industrial?
So currently the zoning is a CD4B, which is identified as a business park, and so that's why warehousing is not permitted, under that zone classification, so. So those types of uses of those types of equipment would not be permitted, that's why they're asking for the use variance.
Okay. Thank you, Sergio. This is still a public hearing. We've not closed the public hearing. Would anyone else like to speak on behalf of the public before we close the public hearing? Going once, going twice. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Sergio, back to what you just said. So the use variance would allow them then to warehouse and have construction equipment and so on?
They are requesting the variance for warehousing, yes.
So that would give them permission to do that, what
Yes.
you just said.
Mhm. That's correct.
Which is our concern, biggest concern.
Thank you. I got everything you said. Right now we close the public hearing, but thank you. We got you.
So if I may
Yes.
comment on several items, obviously in plan commission, you'll see the landscape plan, actually because of those sites, due to her concern, most of our landscaping is actually on the west side of the property. We understand that's where that will be conditioned. We ran the parking count for the mix of percentage of office and warehouse in multiple examples. Right now, we have 5, the main building and the 4 tenants. I ran it, okay, so one guy's gonna take the whole thing in the same percentage that we have of office warehouse. If we're a single tenant, and again, if someone came in there and you can't meet the parking, you can't meet the parking, but in that calculation, it's like 3,500 square feet of office and the remainder is warehouse. I still come up with 22 parking spaces based on that. It's absolutely not the intent of our landlord owner to put somebody who's gonna put crud out in the parking lot or allow them to put, whatever. I don't know if a business comes in that might have, AE Electric who sits there and parks his van outside overnight. I mean, that's prevalent through the park, but the intent's not to have construction equipment, debris, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely, that would not be allowed on our part, at least from the landlord's aspect relative to this. We want to be respectful of the neighbor. We've curbed it, we've landscaped it. The delivery of this, that place is a ghost town right now, although I realize when you add, I'm talking about the truck traffic, you add 4 tenants, the only way you get a semi in there is back it in from the street. And then you unload it each of the tenant spaces, if that's in fact where you're going. That's what they currently do, but they get into the existing building and they leave. This is not set up for high traffic, for semis, and never expected to be that kind of expectation for the tenants you're gonna have.
With your curb cuts that you have right now, do you have room to be able to back in there what you have access wise?
For a semi,
Yes.
yeah, you have to back in from the street, come on and back in to whatever space you're next to, unload, then go out the same way. It's the only way you can access this. You come in frontwards, you get out, but
Right,
you're
right.
not gonna want to do that, absolutely.
Because obviously, as tenants and other neighbors would probably agree to, they wouldn't want to see you unloading semis in the street and bringing your stuff into the building.
No, absolutely.
Right. Any other questions for the petitioner?
Well, my concerns are with the appearance of the building. The provided elevations are not in keeping with what they're in for, right? The blank walls. We haven't addressed how we're gonna handle these blank walls.
Is that something you need to talk with your client before, or do you have the authority to address and how you're gonna run the brick up on this building to make it a softer industrial looking building in a neighborhood?
I'd ask Sergio or someone to comment relative to the requirement for openings, which include doors. We believe we meet the zoning ordinance with doors and or service doors, et cetera, you know, for the spacing. I saw it was stricken from our variance request. So we've actually met that. The issue of additional brick or transom glass on the west elevation.
I encourage you, we have to look at buildings at four sides, so we just can't,
Pardon?
we have to look at buildings at four sides.
No, I know,
We
but-
can't just look at it on one side, right?
But this is gonna be the primary side. We propose it with signage, so it's gonna be the public entrance to if someone goes to visit one of these four tenants or two tenants or whoever they may be. South side is on the other side is so close to the property line, they butt Bowman Manufacturing on the east side. I think the owner would be willing to match the brick on the west side and look at some transom windows up on the west side.
So are you saying that you'll match the height of the existing brick across the entire facade of the west side?
Of the west side.
Only the west side though?
Well, that's also our public side of all these areas. There'll be signage, et cetera. And we had windows up high because that actually adds a plus to the tenants in terms of what we do the warehouse.
So the north elevation is existing, right?
Correct, and it's blank.
And it is, but now that one, is a flat roof, correct?
Correct.
So you're not changing the roof on the flat.
No.
Okay.
On the existing building, on the three sides on it, which would be the west side, the north side, and the east side, does the brick go up the same height? I don't have the renderings in front of the existing building.
Let me see if I have it.
No, I don't. Here you go. Just hold up. Here, just hold up. Yeah, I got it. Okay.
I think it just goes up
Yeah,
8
yeah.
feet. Yeah, it goes up 8 feet.
It goes 8 feet up.
Yeah, that's metal siding. Yeah, and the south side is all
Right.
metal. No brick.
But that's where you're putting the addition on the south side of the existing.
Correct. So that would hide the current metal siding, all metal
Right.
siding. And then we're extending beyond to the south from that point.
Any other thoughts? I personally, I think the brick should go up the same elevation and match that elevation around that you have all the way. Even though you're raising the back of the building up, it's just kind of consistent look there. And it looks like that building looks a lot less industrial to me than the building addition that was proposed.
Are you referring to the west elevation?
I'm referring to all four sides, all four sides of the building. I'm referring to. It's a four-sided building. You have to look at the building.
I
on four sides, right?
understand. Oh, I know you do a retail building, you have a front and the back side and blank and et cetera, so.
I'm not sure even if the school town in Munster came with a bus barn, that this would be able to get past through. So,
Mr. Chairman, can I just,
yes,
for a point of clarification, going back to the use variance. So with this approved use variance, in spite of the fact that it would not be your intent, and clearly the space is not set up for your intent to be used for industrial access for equipment and such, with that use variance, that would be allowed, correct? If that was granted.
use for like,
If this use variance is granted, even though it's not their intent, even how you have it in design, it's clearly not your intent to have semi trucks coming in and out of there. But it would be technically allowed if the use variance was approved.
we don't know what tenants are coming in there. We have no idea what you're gonna put in there.
We understand the conditions of the approval, should they go forward, is that each individual tenant is subject to town approval. If that's a use Well, you just got industrial is not allowed, so warehouse is totally different from industrial, so right now, we're just looking at flex office space, the guy's got 600, 800 square feet of office, the people work there, he has a stock in the back in a warehouse. We're not looking at fabrication, industrial, any of that stuff whatsoever, which I don't classify as a warehouse. That's different use entirely.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yeah, sure.
So when developers come in with proposed buildings and they don't have tenants quite yet, they at least give us an idea of what type of tenant they are trying to obtain. So can you give us some information like that? What type of businesses are they seeking to occupy this building?
Typically these
Suppliers,
I'm sorry.
kind of suppliers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, like a multi-tenant, you've got, well, the current owner, probably well known, is the owner of Albert Jewelers. They don't put jewelry in the space. He has multiple places, operations, his warehouse is used for support his real estate side of life. This would be the same thing. You have I keep using the electrical guy. He has to be able to stock his electrical supplies. He's gonna have an office to build from to have his guys check in and out. Those are the spaces in demand. Those are the spaces that we would see in this particular situation. Again, if somebody came in and wanted to put industrial, it wouldn't happen because you guys aren't gonna let it happen because it doesn't fall into that use. It's a very narrow interpretation of warehouse and office. And those literally is all like we could support parking lot, literally. And so if somebody came in and they need more parking, I mean, I'm sorry, it's history, this is not gonna happen. I have nowhere to put parking, landlord can't put parking anywhere there. So he's severely restricted and because warehouse is stocked. I got the shelves, you got boxes, whether it be an electric shop, whether it be a tile guy keeps the stock there, et cetera, and works out of the space. Those are typically, we typically get in these light industrial parks, in this type of space.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add that at the time that the BZA opens a public hearing for the use variance, and makes a decision, conditions can be placed as well on the use variance concerning outdoor storage or equipment and so forth. So that way it retains the appearance of what is being presented and then guides future tenants as well. Because they are asking for use variance at the time that they go through the public hearing. And then just clarification with regards to development standards, what I've got under discussion is the waiver for the sidewalks, the brick 8 feet high, I believe. And then I'm not sure what the status is on the windows or transom. I think they're working on transom.
No, well, there was talk about transient break up the industrial look at the.
Okay.
Discussing to
Building
clarify.
materials, use is the next public hearing.
Yes. But in terms of windows, like I said, we put these buildings up with like 2 foot by 4 foot windows across each tenant space. One, it adds to the appearance, but it's also a very big plus to daylight within the space of tenant spaces.
So I'll bring it back to the commission. Any questions on the building composition, building materials, the frontage build out, the entrances, the blank walls, and the facade openings for this addition? That's it. Like I said, my opinion, we should match up the brick to the height of that upper siding that has a similar look of the front of the building a little higher. So you're
Understood. We can concede that.
So.
like I said, the sidewalk, I'd be fine with as long as the condition is for when the sidewalk on both sides, yeah, it's not going in the future.
So, Mr. Chairman, on the agenda, the items to consider are building setback. Is there something with the setback on this?
Correct. Yeah. Existing structure does not comply with the current setback.
You'd have to build the front of the building up closer to the 20-foot setback, correct? That's hard.
So on this list is frontage build out. What's the issue there?
To go down the individual items. or-
Yeah,
Probably
trying
have to
to
do that.
formulate a motion.
Well, the number one is existing building is non-conforming because of the change in the code. So that's variance, developmental variance one. Currently, where it sits doesn't meet frontage, which should be up at 20 feet, and we're asking to leave it where it is, which is 35 feet back. The building composition currently as it exists doesn't have a base, middle, and cap. We ask the variance to accept it as is in terms of the existing building. The siding is non-conforming of the existing building, so we're asking a variance to allow the existing building to have siding, but we're also asking for metal siding on the new building. The frontage build out, the percent required is because this building it doesn't meet the percentage requirements, so we're asking for a variance to allow us to keep the width of the building as is. Blank walls aren't allowed in the front, they're existing, we're asking you to accept it as is. Facade openings, again, you mix doors, openings, windows, we do have them, but we're adding windows now at your request, but we meet the various openings via the service doors, overhead doors, existing doors, etc. Relative to that. Signs are required of the principal facade. Well, our principal facade is the west elevation, so we're asking for signs to be able to put up the west elevation. And that'll be done in accordance with the ordinance. There'll be wall signs. And the last one was the sidewalks relative to developmental variances.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I make a motion to approve all that. I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Nick, Georgia.
All that Nick just said. Waiving the requirement for the sidewalk. Adding a requirement for the brick wainscot to match the existing height on that new brick will match the existing brick height at roughly 8 feet around the entire building.
Or are you gonna go up just to that higher parapet kind of?
Whatever the existing is,
Yeah, with the
correct?
existing one, yeah.
Correct. And then the addition of transom windows on the west
The
facade.
west facade, yes,
Did I get them all?
yes.
Ms. Mayor, would you think about, adjusting your motion for the sidewalks to put in the future once the adjacent sidewalks are installed, just to have it in its record?
Yes.
I
Yes.
would recommend as part of that motion that recommendation or that as part of that condition will be reported on the deed.
Okay, so adding the condition that if sidewalks are built out in future properties nearby, that sidewalks, adjacent properties, that sidewalks will be built on this site as well. And that should be recorded in the deed. Also, is this the variance that we're going to add conditions regarding storage of
That's
materials
your
on
use.
site?
That's your use.
Yes,
right?
use, that's the next one.
That's the next one. Okay, so not this one. Okay. Then I got it.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion?
Nothing.
That being said, Sergio, would you please call roll?
Mr. Hemingway,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Merriman,
Yes.
and Chairman Rappin.
Yes. Thank you for working with us tonight.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is public hearing BZA 24007, it's use variance. Christy Carson Ruder with Region Contractors requesting a use variance from table 266405A7 to allow future warehousing facility uses within our proposed 11,476 additional to an existing 4918 square foot CD4B building at 620 Progress Avenue. Sergio, I'll turn this over to you and Jim.
Sure. The current property was previously zoned M for manufacturing in 2019, and 2020 or 2019. The property is rezoned to CD4. It prohibits the use of warehouse and warehousing. The applicant is looking to continue that use, and they're here requesting a use variance to allow future warehouse facility within the proposed addition. So I'll see if Jennifer has anything else to add.
I would just add, with some of the questions during the last hearing, really staff is gonna base their decisions off the use, any proposed uses off the definition section. I believe there's a clip. Yeah, so warehousing, how that's defined, there's also warehouse retail that we didn't include in the staff report. So that's how staff will make those decisions on what is permitted.
So Jennifer, any new tenants must receive approval of the business registration prior to occupying the space.
Correct, they should.
Correct. When business comes in, they have the business registration. We look up the address and look at their identified use and determine if the parking meets the minimum standards, as well as in this case, if there should be any conditions placed on it. The property will be identified as a use variance with conditions, and we would review those conditions as well to make sure compliance is met.
So as the neighbor presented earlier, they have a business in there that's consumer based, they have a golf place, so it's more like a retail. How do we make sure that she's not walking out of a retail place and the parking lot is full of construction trucks after her? You know, do we make sure that stuff is stored inside at nighttime or stored on the property within the building?
Those are conditions can be imposed as part of the experience.
Any other quick questions for the petitioner before I open this up to a public hearing?
May I comment before
Yes.
public hearing? Thank you. As Jennifer indicated, warehouse is clearly defined in your code, which is indoor storage of goods, including self-storage facilities. I will even put it out ahead of time that in that park, I mean, if you have an employee truck that sits there overnight, you know, because they have to, and that exists all over the park. But I will put it out there, the landlord will gladly agree to prohibiting construction vehicle storage, items, etc., that I will sit out in that parking lot around the property right off the bat.
Won't be an overnight parking.
Part,
Won't be.
well, I don't know that if tenant has, you know, if it's like I said, he's an electric company, if this guy parks his van overnight, that's a guy who comes and he services and leaves from there. I'm clarifying that construction equipment, non-vehicles, you know, et cetera, broken down, anything, we're willing to, I'll acquiesce to that right off the bat, so, you know, that nothing will be there that's unsightly and ungainly or whatever on that side.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Thank you. That being said, we have BZA 24007, it's use variance. This is to allow a future warehousing facility at the proposed 620 Progress Avenue. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on behalf of the public? If so, you can come up to the microphone, please state your name and address for public record.
Hi, my name is Victoria Odegaard and I represent the Jewish Federation at 585 Progress Avenue in Munster. Our basic concern is they can build it out. We're worried about traffic. We have a preschool that's down there and we have parents that are trying to get in. We have seniors that come to the community center. What kind of traffic is going to be on this road? I mean, that's fine. They can build it out. We don't, you know, we're just trying to figure out like, you know, what the intent is so that we can prepare our tenants or people that use our facility. Because we have like about 60 or 70 families that come to drop off around 9 o'clock and pick up around 1. And if they got a semi in the middle of the road, that really kind of puts a hamper on things for us. So we just want to get a clarification on that.
So we have no idea what the use is gonna be yet. That's why we're trying to ask the petitioner what, you know, and he's giving us his basis on what he thinks will rent in that property. Thank you. This is still a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to come up and speak on behalf of the public before I close the meeting? Going once, going twice. We'll close the meeting and bring it back to the BZA. The tricky part is obviously we don't know the use. The client and tenants aren't. You don't have them yet, so you're gonna build it for spec and see what you get rented out on the rest of the space. There's concerns from the neighborhood between the Jewish Federation and the business next door. We just want to make sure that one, parking is an issue on that street that detrimental to the rest of the subdivision, as well as, you know, containing what kind of vehicles and everything else are parked in that, so you're not leaving bobcat trailers and everything else overnight, because I don't know what you're gonna have, and right now you guys don't know what you're gonna have, so we wanna make sure if we're gonna let, future warehousing facilities in here based on a use variance, we wanna make sure that later on, as it's spelled out, whether it's doctor offices or other retail, or the Jewish Federation adds on to their building, we wanna make sure that it's the right fit for the sector.
Relative to see, the type of businesses typically, again, I can't guarantee that, but typically a 1-ton truck, a panel van, they're delivering to these small 2,500 square foot units, similar to a retail, or you're parked in the back. The other thing which we can indicate, which is normally required, is we can indicate the semi-loading is being in the driveway, because I'm concerned of a semi to get it delivered to any of these locations would be unmanageable relative to parking the street, because the guys that want the shortest distance from point A to point B, he's gonna back in. We can indicate the loading zone down the center of the parking lot, so any loading restriction would be they'd have to come off the street, back in, and then leave, which is typical of what the adjacent buildings and properties do, by loading dock to either side of the industrial one part of the relative.
And that brings us back to with staff working on what use you have in there later on, because if you have 4 units and they're all a plumbing service center or electrical service center, and each of them have 5 trucks and they're all parked in each one, by the time you get out there, there's not a lot of parking left in that area if everyone's parked there or service calls and that kind of stuff, right? So that comes back to use, as well as coming back to staff to see what businesses are appropriate at that time of use. So we just want to make that clear. When it comes down the road, you're gonna have to make sure the parking requirements are met for each tenant that you rent out there.
We understand that. Totally understand.
That being said, what is the pleasure of the BZA based on all the information that was presented tonight on the use variance?
So,
Up at one.
well, this is not a recommendation to the town board, right? This is
It's the
granting or not granting of it.
It's a recommendation to the town.
Oh, it is a
Yeah,
recommendation.
under Foster use variance.
Okay. So I will make a motion to recommend to the town board the approval of a use variance for BZA 24-007, conditioned on that there will be no parking of construction type equipment.
I'll assist you, exterior storage, anything, no, we're willing to work with staff to define that. like I said, I guarantee the landlord does not want anything other than a car parked out there or whatever.
Well, I believe even staff in the staff report was looking at, you know, that any new tenants must receive approval of their business registration prior to
Absolutely.
occupying the space, so obviously that would dictate.
So we would have that condition as well, for a review by the town of the occupants. Okay. And then, there will be, also the unloading of trucks that would be done in the drag rather than from the street.
Yeah, we can indicate that on the site plan, confirm that in the planning commission also that the loading zone would be coming down the parking lot.
And that's also something town council can Progress Drive, if it becomes an issue, you make no parking down there and town council can handle enforcement on Progress Drive.
So those were the three conditions I had. Is there anything else that we needed?
We have a motion,
Second that motion.
we have a motion, the second, is there any further discussion? That being said, Sergio, please call roll.
Mr. Hemingway,
Yes.
Ms. Johns,
Yes.
Ms. Merrill,
Yes.
and Chairman Rappin.
Yes. Thank you for all your time tonight.
Thank you for cooperation.
Next item on the agenda is findings of facts. We have BZA 24003. We have developmental standard variance Joy Brown representing Howard Weiss of the Fremont Business Building received variance for approvals from the Town of Munster zoning code table 266701B monument signs specific standards for quantity, area, height, and landscaping from section 266701B5T to extend the existing sign cabinet located at 9245 Calumet Avenue. Has everyone had a chance to review these findings and facts? If so, what is the pleasure of the BZA? We're looking for a motion for the approval of the findings.
Chairman, I'm not making a motion. Approve the findings.
The BZA 24003. We have a second. The motion second, any discussion? Sergio, please call roll.
Mr. Hemingway,
Yes.
Ms. Johns,
Yes.
Ms. Merrill,
Yes.
and Chairman Rappin.
Yes. Next item is continued discussion items of the business. Sergio, do you have any other items?
I do not.
I have, before we.
Ms. Mayor?
Sergio, can you ask the petitioner for Eric Stojkovich and Chad Groen for a floor plan? Because I don't think you provided a floor plan for that sports building.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Next item is next regular business meeting, September 10th, 2024. That being said, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
Motion, Johnny, second.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Sergio, please call roll.
Mr. Hemingway,
Yes.
Ms. Johns, Ms. Merrill,
Yes.
and Chairman Rappin.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for your public service tonight. Thank you for everyone that came by.
Ready? Action. All right, I'm gonna call this meeting of the Munster Plan Commission for Tuesday, August 13th, 2024 to order. Please set your phones on stun. Mr. Mendoza, please call roll.
Ms. Brannigan. Dr. Hawks. Here. Ms. Johns.
Here.
Mr. Peterson. Here. Mr. Rappin.
Here.
Mr. Schinkin.
Here.
And President Baker.
Present. We also need to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from June 2024. Any comments, corrections, motions? What say you?
Mr. Baker, I can review the minutes, they appear to be in order, I move to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? And a second. Pick who you like, Denise, and then and go with it. Any discussion? Either none. We're still doing roll call vote, I would assume.
Yes.
Ready for that, Mr. Mendoza?
Ms. Brannigan,
Yes.
Dr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Raffy,
Yes.
Mr. Shingle.
Yes.
And President Baker.
Yes. Next up, a preliminary hearing, PC 24-007, PUD amendment. Annie Quinnell of VRQ LLC representing Powers Health is requesting an amendment to Community Hospital Plan Unit Development to add a CHP cogeneration unit to the east side of Community Hospital located at 901 MacArthur. Mr. Mendoza, what's going on?
So I'll give a quick briefing and then turn over to Jennifer, who will add if necessary, and then we can listen to what the applicant has to provide. This is operating under a plan unit development. They're asking for an additional use for a cogen facility on the northeast side of the facility. And I will add or turn it over to Jennifer and see what the staff department has. Jennifer, are you available?
Yes, sorry, you were breaking up at the ends there. So I didn't catch what you were saying, but the facility would like to add this cogen unit on the north east corner of this kind of block of their facility. Here you'll see renderings on the north side, the east side, of what that would look like. They would have a big masonry wall. Some of those mechanicals are sticking up above that wall and they're replacing the landscaping. So they're basically bringing out the building footprint and taking up some parking spaces that exist today. There is a small image there showing what it looks like today. So not very different, still a big wall with landscaping. Overall here. And like we said, there is some parking spaces that are being taken up, but it was my understanding they just built a parking facility and they feel they have plenty of parking.
Is that it, Jennifer?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right, any questions for staff before we give it to the petitioner? Either none, is there somebody to speak on this? Please state your name, sir, and your address for the record.
Andrew Quinnell, 1938 Martha Street in Munster, Indiana. I also have with me Jay Ballard from Bernhard Engineering, who is providing energy as a service to all of the Powers Health facilities throughout Northwest Indiana. What we would like to do and what we're proposing to do here is to add a 4,000 amp cogen facility to the existing community hospital for use during peak hours. As you know, when we have peak energy usage, the hospital gets first dibs on the power, and we start to have brownouts or less energy for the rest of the area. This particular unit that we would be adding would help shave peak energy uses during peak use, like, you know, those 90-degree days when, you know, 100% humidity, everybody's running their air conditioning. This would help shave that peak usage.
Is that it?
I can go really in depth, Mr. Baker.
No, I'm just asking if that part of your presentation is done.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Mendoza, what we're looking at is a PUD amendment to make a recommendation to the town council. Is that correct?
That is correct. You want to set this for public hearing and listen to the public. At that time, they'll also file for development plan review that will go for public hearing. And that recommendation would go to the town council.
Thank you. So, you know, looking at the aerial, obviously there's some power generation units at this location of the hospital already. So cogen, is that same as a backup generator?
No, it's a little more efficient than a backup generator.
So is this running all of the time?
No, this would run during peak hours. It shaves the peak usage.
Is our peak hours defined already as far as the hospital? I have no idea.
You know, typically, we're looking at, you know, 8 in the morning till 6 at night, but not always that time frame. You know, it could be 4 hours within there.
So usually, Mr. Cornell, what we do is, especially for rooftop units and heavy equipment like that, is some kind of shielding. So when folks are driving by any kind of commercial building, they don't have to look at all of the, machinery works. It looks like there isn't any type of screening on this. Is that on purpose or is there something?
That there is a 22-foot wall right now that we will be building. The wall that you see with the doors and all. We do need free airflow for part of this in order to allow combustion.
So I'm looking at, so it's a 22 high foot building. How high is this equipment I'm looking at the east elevation on top of that building?
I believe it is, the total height is 31 feet, so it'd be 9 feet higher than that.
9 feet higher. Is that different from these big rooftop units that are currently there?
Yes.
Is there a particular reason we'd have to look at that, or is there some way to screen that?
Again, we need free airflow in there. We need to be able to get flow for, for combustion.
Thank you.
Secure.
Yes.
Andy, you think about doing like a metal screen wall? I mean, we do our data centers I'm building, we do
Yep.
run all the chillers, we have to
Yep.
have that stuff. We do a metal
With
screen
the
wall
mesh,
around it.
with vines or just mesh.
Yeah, I mean,
We could extend something like that up
I
there.
can give you a detail, private data center if you want us.
Okay.
Screen wall, we're putting up there, it looks nice.
Yeah.
Also, any kind of sound studies on this, what's the decibel rating?
It's not, I want to say it's about 72.
74 dB at, if I'm not mistaken, 60 feet.
And that's a constant, obviously, when it's running. And it could be running that same decibel from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. It could possibly.
Pretty much, when the unit is running.
But that would, again, that would be at peak hours and most people then probably would be inside because we're shaving the peak load. So everybody's got their air conditioning running.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I took some time to study this, and I had an opportunity to speak with one of my colleagues on the town council, Mr. Mellons. And he reminded me of the concerns that we might have regarding noise. And he shared with me an anecdote about the Pepsi plant. Apparently years ago, they had some type of a similar device that would go off at midnight. And a former colleague of ours on the planning commission and on the BZA, Stuart Friedman, could hear it all the way across town. In the course of me doing research on this, I went looking for what this would sound like. And this is what it sounds like. I want to play it.
Councilman, where is that?
This is a YouTube video of a cogeneration plant. So here is my concern. Where this is located, it is within 100 to 200 yards of the town pool where you'll have children playing. It is within a couple hundred yards of the school, of the high school. Right across the street, we have the daycare facility that is run by Westminster Church with infants and toddlers and preschoolers. And then you have a neighborhood just to the east where one of our colleagues, Councilman Hoffert, lives. So this is and 70 decibels is loud, and I imagine it could be even louder. And the exposure here creates concerns for me. So nothing in the petition speaks to noise dampening. Nothing in here in this petition speaks to installing sound dampening, but more to the point, Mr. Quinnell, have you spoken with anybody on the park board to get their take on whether this is okay?
The park board actually was in our original staff meeting, and actually the park board is putting the cogen unit in, I believe, out at Centennial Park.
Well, this is not Centennial Park. This is
No,
right
it's-
across from the town pool.
Yeah.
I don't see any input from them. Have you had any input from the high school, how this might affect them?
No, again,
at 60 feet, it's 74 dB. Of course, that we can provide the data on that, how much it dissipates per feet. I mean, at some point, when you get 100, 200 feet away, it's going to be white noise.
Well,
It's not going to be what you're hearing on.
More to my point. I attended Munster High School. I played in the band, and I know the band practices on that parking lot right across from the hospital. And if you're telling me that this could be something that could be happening until 6 o'clock, that could certainly impact what they're trying to do out in that parking lot. How about Westminster Church? Was there any contact with them, how this might affect?
No, again, you know, we can provide the data showing how the sound dissipates the further away you get from this.
Okay, well, and furthermore, we heard from the anecdote shared by my colleague, Council President Nellens, different times of the day with different weather conditions, that sound can travel even further. I don't think anybody who heard this just now would characterize that as something that they would want to be surrounded with. I do observe that here in Munster, we do have many professionals, including attorneys. I think this planning commission should be mindful of the fact that noise like that might generate the types of lawsuits that we've seen in the past. I'll give you an example. Read the Planning Commission in town of Munster, which occurred in 2004. It was a lawsuit brought by Ken Reed, who is the father of former town councilman John Reed. These are the types of disturbances that would seriously upset the neighborhood. And I think that this is something that we need to consider. Quite candidly, if this is as bad as this noise sound, this is something that's going to be very troubling for the community, and it's going to be something that the town council and members of the planning commission are going to be blamed for. And I don't particularly want to be blamed for this. Let's talk a little bit about the contractors. Who's going to be doing the work, Mr. McConnell?
Bernhard Engineering is contracted by Powers to do all of, they're basically doing energy as a service at all of the Powers Health facilities throughout Northwest Indiana.
So this is a contractor that's motivated to sell these cogeneration plants.
Not necessarily. What they're doing is they're helping to shave the peak usage of energy is one of the #1 costs at the hospital. And so what they're doing is they're going and trying to figure, they're basically formulating plans on how they can reduce the energy usage at each and every one of our facilities, at each and every one of Powers Health facilities.
As it looks like we're losing some ADA spots and some charging stations for vehicles. Are there plans to replace these anywhere?
Yes, we prior to the garage, we had about 1,761 spaces. And with the construction of the garage and some other things, we are now up to 20, I think it's 2581 or 2481. So we're adding quite a few spaces,
Well,
along with charging spaces and handicap.
okay, well, that's not reflected anywhere in the petition, and that's something.
It's in the plans.
Okay, well, we need to see that in the petition, because
Good.
this is a change to the PUD. There's no affirmative right to an amendment to the PUD. That's a request directed to the town. And I think there needs to be complete transparency. This board is being asked to vote on something, and we don't have evidence that these things exist. That's troubling to me. I also see that we're reducing the travel space within that area. I'm curious if parking that's being removed, rather than using some of those other facilities, might be forced across the street into the pool parking lot or into the Westminster parking lot. Have there been any studies to determine what's the likelihood of that?
Well, we've just added over 600 spaces between the garage and everything else. So they're hoping to not be using any more spaces across the street.
Isn't it fair to say that that parking lot is generally the parking for people that are using the hospital?
The parking spaces that we're taking away right there are generally the doctors generally park there.
Okay, all right. And have we spoken with the chief of police or the chief of the fire department to address these concerns about the sound and any public safety issues?
The fire department was in on the staff meeting.
Okay, I don't see any reports from them in here, but I'd like to see that. Are there any other facilities that members of the planning commission could visit to actually gauge what the sound, how bad the sound actually is?
We're doing the same thing in St. Catharines, but that's going to be run in conjunction with this. But I could find a facility where we could show you one that's up and running.
Mr. Chairman, I think we have a lot of unanswered questions here. We have a number of things that.
Excuse me, Councilman, do you have any more questions for the petitioner?
You finished?
Okay,
Please.
because I have more questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you sure you want to finish?
I'll pass. and
Okay.
If, I'm thinking if your questions generate further, I hope you'll allow me leave to continue asking.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Quinn, I'm looking about ingress and egress off of Fisher. It said somewhere in the petition, it's going to be a one-way lane. Is it going to be south to north? Is it going to be north to south only? How is that one way going to do it? Is that going to impact the ingress and egress on Fisher?
No, it will not impact the ingress and egress. The only thing that will be, and it's going to be from south to the north, if you roll up a little bit, it'll just be that area that we're taking out the parking spaces.
But
Just for
that lane right
short-
there is a two-lane right now currently.
Yes, that is, but around this side of it, to the east, there are 2 lanes that are 2-lane.
Okay, so currently it's 2 lanes that run along the building. And my question is, I thought I read that this construction was going to take that 2-lane down to 1 lane, and I was looking for some additional explanation on that. So if you could help.
Sergio, I can
give us a
explain
gloss.
that.
If you go back to one page, sir, you can see it. Right here, Mr. Baker. This is where you enter the outpatient area.
Right.
So this area here is the only thing that's going to be taken out and made one way. So it's the area with about 9 spaces.
So 1 way, so and that's
And
my
it will be
question.
1 way going to the north.
1 way going to the north. All right, and then when you get to the north, then you're gonna have to jog around the
You'll-
parking island to get to the right-hand ingress egress, because that parking island you're pointing to right there is still within the parking lot of the hospital.
Correct. But you can actually, there's a drive lane right there. I don't know why that's shown like that, but there is a drive lane.
It looks like what's there.
If you go down to the picture,
Yeah,
you can see you can drive right through there.
all right, so it's 1 lane, so that's gonna be a 1 lane only all the way through from
Just
the
from here.
south end to the north end, or
Just from right there.
Oh, you're gonna stop people there, okay.
Yeah. So if it'll be 2-way here,
Oh,
so you can come up and turn around.
got it.
Or if you wanted to continue north, you would continue north and out. Or
Right.
continue north and head east and come around.
You're just not gonna be able to come in off of Fisher and go down that chute. You're gonna have to move
Yeah.
over to one of the other 2 lanes.
Correct.
Thank you. Is this the only location, I'm assuming, because this is where all the other power is located, that you have this is the only choice for this location, for this piece of equipment?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr.?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I think we should just go one down.
All right.
I will bring up the point that we do have a generation system in Cobblestones.
Yeah.
We have one at the park. It's right across the street from my house. I don't hear the noise. I don't know how it compares to yours, but I'm right across the street and I don't hear the noise. The sound studies I do for all our data center generators and our shingles that we're doing, and I think I got 9 data centers going on right now. We do the sound studies, we check it out, but if you're at 75 decibels, just to give in layman's terms, that's about the sound of my wife's hair dryer, maybe the dishwasher. So if you're at 75 decibels, that you're at about the noise of a dishwasher. Now, is there a study you could do that could mock or simulate that sound at the location and have some sound sensors around the property?
It's approximately the same as running a lawnmower, so I
Right.
can run a lawnmower and walk out to the
Right.
woods.
So I think, I don't know if that's the same kind of sound that you're getting at the Pepsi plant. I don't know their operations, but I know decibels. And I know if you're saying 75, that's.
That's one reason why the walls are so high, it still lets the airflow come in and cool the system off, but the stacks are up high enough that the noise is up at a higher altitude. So it's not actually carrying down across.
But that noise coming out of the stacks are at 75, or you're saying the bleed out away from that's at 75?
The noise coming out of the stacks is 75.
At 75.
So
So
the
you
bleed
got-
out is
you
even
got-
less.
So you got a long, up high, you got about a lawnmower running all day long.
Correct.
I think you can also dissipate some of that sound if you had some screen walls, it would probably, you know, not only hide the mechanicals, but also, you know.
Help dissipate or
help
absorb.
dissipate a bit. So, I mean, some of the things we can look at. So, just wanted to tell you, decibels, sound studies.
Nice. So you're saying that what the proposal is the same as running a lawnmower?
Well, I set a hair dryer off mine.
Okay.
Or dishwasher. That's about
And he said a
75.
lawnmower, so that's a pretty good hair dryer then.
Yeah.
There you go.
My wife yelling at me. That might be.
150.
But they're all valid concerns on obviously noise and aesthetics and stuff
Yeah.
that we should look at and address to make sure it's the, you know, the right fit. Obviously, community hospital is a good neighbor. They want to do what's best. They're gonna be here a long time, so I know they always, you know, look at the interests of the community as well. So, thank you.
All right.
Mrs. Johns?
My question was, are these type of cogen units used in areas typical to this? And as they're spec'd, are they used in areas that have residential and commonly?
Yeah.
Okay, and concerns for combustion or failure in that kind of way, any kind of additional fire risk from this type of generation of power?
No different than the standard cogen or a generator that's sitting out on the street right now.
Okay. So those are my additional questions. Thank you.
Brannigan?
I do, agree that it is unsightly. I think it could certainly benefit from screening. I do agree with a lot of Mr. Peterson's questions. As the vice president of the marching band, I would like to advocate for that parking lot. Not so much, the issues at the sound, but why are people parking in that lot? You have a brand new parking garage and we had 2 weeks of band camp with all sorts of cars.
I
That's a
will,
separate issue, but,
I'll bring that up to someone.
I'm on it. No, but you know, there's plenty of parking since you've added. And I often use that parking lot a lot. I go in and out for outpatient services. So, I think, you know, it seems like, why aren't people trickling over to the parking garage? But
Old habits are hard to break.
sure,
I can
sure.
kind of answer, that was a previous project, not by us, but different, and I believe it's been from like 2 months. They've been completed with parking garages open now. About 6 weeks. About 6 weeks, month and a half, so.
Sure, yeah, it's very recent, but yeah, I agree that, you know, we do want to be careful with the sound for sure. I mean, given the neighborhood nearby, your neighborhood, and the school close by, the pool, those are all great points, and I personally don't want to look at that. I mean, if the screening needs to happen. in my opinion.
And we can add screening. And my sister-in-law and brother-in-law live down from Joe, so I don't think, you know, I can't have sound for them.
Sure, sure. I think we all have the same interest, yeah.
And it seems like where we live, so closely to the hospital, not only, you know, this idea, but, you know, since, the hospital closed down in Hammond, we're inundation with ambulance sirens all night, every night.
Yeah.
So that's like, you know, and then you're gonna bring this in front of us and like, oh, this is gonna be great.
Well,
You know, I think, you know, as far as, the intention of this, I mean, clarifying, because I mean, I'm unaware of like peak hour and like how, I've never really noticed there was an effect on the energy I'm using, running my air conditioner at 74, like my power's, you know, and then also when the power does go out, I mean, the generators that run are annoying.
yeah,
You know, and those, you know, and Roland was making the reference of a hairdryer, and I made a joke about the hairdryer in the Dunkin' Donuts, bathroom will deafen you if you're in there longer than your hands being dry. So there's different versions of that, and I don't even turn the bathroom fan on because it annoys me.
you know, Mr. Raffin was talking about data centers. Data centers actually are one of the largest consumers of power. Right now, you know, NIPSCO, and because we've gone away from fossil fuels to generate our electricity, all the public utilities are having the hardest time generating enough electricity to meet the demand that all of our communities have, whether it's a business, a residence, or whatever. They regulate that demand, of course, based on necessity. You know, so they do, believe it or not, you may not notice it, but they do shave back or cut back on the amount of power that's getting to certain grids at certain times because they just don't have enough. But they won't do that to a hospital or a healthcare center because they need to have full power in order to keep it operational, and, you know, because it could be a life or death situation. So, you know, us Powers putting this in here also is not just, you know, for their own benefit of shaving their peak usage and everything. It also does help the community because it frees up power for the rest of the community. And that problem isn't going away. I mean, you can read about it every day, how we just can't generate enough electricity to meet the demand.
So there really is nowhere else it could go, like maybe closer on the Calumet side, which is a little bit
No,
louder.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing over there, and it's fed, the power gets fed right on this corner here as well.
Here's the lines right there. Any other questions, Councilman? No? Councilman, back to you.
Well, I think it's important that we get away from these other stakeholders. And one of the concerns that I have is that the typical noticing is what Sergio helped there. I think it's 300 feet from the 200. We have a number of stakeholders here, and more to the point, I'm familiar with these notices. Get this notice in the mail, the homeowner, you look at this, what's this? And you throw it in the wastebasket. The notice doesn't talk about the concerns, particularly the noise concern that I've identified. And I think as part of this, there needs to be additional steps to make sure that these stakeholders are fully aware of what's coming in, that they may have a lawnmower type sound persistently running from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. during summertime or other times. And I think these groups need to weigh in. I think it should include park board and the manager of the pool. I think it should be the principal of the high school as well as the school board. I think it should be the Westminster, the governors of Westminster, or the people that are operating the daycare, in addition to the typical residential noticing. So if we can do that, I think at that point we'd be in a position to have make further decisions. And until that happens, I don't think we should be racing this forward for a public hearing where these stakeholders may not be fully aware or understand what is going to happen with this cogeneration facility.
You know, I have a question. This might be for you, Mr. Wicklund. On the notices to the surrounding property owners, is that a part of the preliminary hearing, or is that a requirement as it moves into a public hearing?
It comes into play at the public hearing.
So if we set it for public, then that's when the notices go out, and then they would be able to come in and have a discussion with whatever their opinions are based upon that public notice.
Right, correct.
So those don't go out until we set it for a public hearing.
Correct.
Mr. Baker, I think because of where this is located, important stakeholders, I think we should have a notification step here before we set it for public hearing, where we seek the input of these stakeholders. I think, again, we give them notice, we tell them, we identify that there's a potential noise issue that they should be aware of, and they're allowed to appear before us in this planning session, and they can offer their thoughts. I've heard from Ms. Brannigan that it might make sense to have a higher wall I've also received comments that suggest further baffling to minimize the noise. I don't think talking through a proposal like this that could have serious impacts on this group of stakeholders, when the question that was asked, can you move it elsewhere? And the response we get is no, means this location or nobody else. Well, then we need to hear from these people. And it needs to be in a setting where we're not racing against a public hearing. Let's hear from them first in the planning session. And then we can move forward with the procedural aspects of giving out the notices and have a public hearing. So with that being said, I would move that we table this for 30 days and allow that to occur before we consider setting this for a public hearing.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. Mr. Peterson? Wouldn't it kind of be advantageous if the petitioner could pull all this together in 30 days, notifications? If it doesn't meet our criteria at a public hearing, we can continue the public hearing. We don't have to close the public hearing. If we don't have all the facts and all that kind of stuff, and we, but that way, at least we have a timetable in 30 days to get the school board in front of here, the band director, the pool, but at least we have a timeline and we have a public hearing. We don't have to close that public hearing. We can keep it open, we can table it, and we can continue it, but at least we're moving forward and not just having a 60-day dead period, but we have every bit of authority within this commission to keep things moving and open, right?
Well, I understand that, but again, I don't want there to feel like there's a drumbeat to move forward.
Well, there's no drumbeat. I don't feel a drumbeat. If it's something doesn't meet it, we've said here long enough, all of us, that we keep this thing going until we're comfortable and the community's comfortable, but at least hopefully we maybe just, be able to keep discussing it instead of.
Because they're gonna have to come back and show us the plans with the shading around that, so
Right.
let them work on it now.
Well, that's an easy drawing. I can get that drawn tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know what you're
That's
saying.
Sidewall and
Just-
that kind of stuff. But the only thing I'm saying is, at least we start hitting some of these problems or discussions up front and start discussing it instead of waiting, right?
Well, if I can respond to that, I don't think we're waiting. I think we're being thoughtful and careful. That noise, I mean, did you find that noise acceptable? What I played?
It's not, but I don't know if we're comparing apples to apples.
Okay, well,
right?
my point is this. If we get this wrong, there's gonna be a lot of upset people. I don't wanna get this wrong. And I don't, and you've been on these boards for many years, as have I, and I know how this can take on a drumbeat to move forward. And I don't want that drumbeat to drown out what should be a thoughtful process. And again, it's not our job to do this, it's the petitioner's job. Is that right, Mr. Cornell?
Yep.
Okay, so if we're gonna do this, I think in good faith, let's put it back on the petitioner. Mr. Cornell, do you have a problem getting the school board to come
We
in
could
here?
have everybody here for a public hearing for the next meeting.
How about we do it on another study session? And we get them in here, and then we can do the public hearing after we've heard from them. Because they might offer thoughts that could help us tailor this proposal to make it work. And doing that will then allow us to have a public hearing when the general public comes in. And we might be able to have answers for these folks because we've heard from these important stakeholders. Would you be okay with that?
Well, I think we could probably, I would go to the school board, the park board and everybody now, get their input and have it ready for the public hearing on, for the next plan commission meeting.
And
It shouldn't take that long for me to get with the school board, Westminster and.
Well,
is that something?
it's more than that. I think we want the principal of Munster High School.
Yeah.
We want the manager over at the pool. And we want the people, not only Westminster, which is, I think it's the Board of Governors, isn't that what it's called?
Deacons, maybe?
The deacons, as well as the folks that run the daycare. And then we might have a public hearing on top of that. I'm thinking, let's do this as a study session. If we're talking about bringing these people in, we want time to be able to weigh what they have to say. And then we can we can have a thoughtful decision to set this public hearing. Is there a urgency in terms of the time periods?
We just would like to, we have to get this approved to get it sent downstate for approval and everything. So there is kind of an urgency. We, every week we wait is another week that we're not getting our approvals from our design release from downstate. So.
Okay, well, there's every builder that I've ever encountered always gives me that answer. There's always that urgency to get it done yesterday. But right now, my thinking is that we do this in terms of a study session. We get these important stakeholders to come in, we hear from them, we can then craft decisions, we can have our staff adjust the petition so that it makes sense in light of those comments. And then I think we'd be ready to do it for a public hearing. So Rapid, would you be agreeable to that?
Yes, but I would like to see if we can get stakeholders. I don't know how long it takes yet, but I mean, I do think it's possible to have things done before the next meeting. They incorporate something, like I said, we can put out notices, and we can require them legally to send out notices to all those people that we said. We don't have to make it a 200-foot thing. We can say, make sure you're sending it, and come up with a list.
I'd actually like to hear from these groups. I'd like them to show up here. And you and I have done that in the past with other hearings, where we've had these stakeholders show up and offer their opinions. And I would definitely like to hear that from these groups.
I don't know if you get the pool person there, the director, but you get a park and rec director that controls the pool there. I think they would have a little bit more say than the high school manager, teacher that's like manager is managing the pool. So this is hearing the kids yell, that might be more of a stakeholder. But I think the commission should come up with kind of a list so the petitioner knows who we think the stakeholders are that we should send out notices to make sure they're incorporated. And I have no problem doing a work session like we've done this the last Tuesday of the month and the previous months before, at least discuss this before a plan commission meeting for public record, but that would be the chairman, I believe, saying that, right? The chairman said that, Mr. Wickland?
Yes.
A meeting.
So, I mean, from the standpoint of moving the process along, still giving you the opportunity, Councilman, to hear from the stakeholders, which I'm assuming you want to do in a face-to-face setting, should they elect to come and do that. And if they just say, here, I want to give you a letter, is that going to be sufficient? Or are we going to start looking at?
We got to get this right.
No, I understand.
It's got to be done right. And in fact,
I think they'll do it right, but I know the concern is of making sure it's something that's palatable for the community around at this very busy intersection.
my thinking is, let's give this 30 days to work on it. I'm not going to sit on this. I'm going to also make my own outreach to these groups. And I think if we set this over for another study session of 30 days, we invite these people to come in, comment on this. I think that would give us enough time for them to weigh this out, and it would allow us to thoughtfully address this. And I think this allows for a thoughtful conversation to occur, which is what I feel we need to have.
So maybe I make a suggestion in that we have a contingency for scheduling the public hearing, that we do have that pre-meeting sometime between now and 2-week period to be able to move that along. Is that something that's palatable as far as setting it right now as a part of that approval?
Is there a problem having it at the next planning commission meeting?
No, because that would be the public, wouldn't that be the public hearing?
Well, my motion is to set this over for another study session, like what we're doing tonight, at the next month's meeting. That's what the motion's on the table.
So the motion on the table, can you read that? Can you help me again with that? I'm sorry.
This would be a motion to table this petition for a month to allow the outreach to the park board, the principal of Munster High School, the school board, and the folks at Westminster, and have them weigh in on it.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Wait a second, Rob. I have a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion?
What about the residents?
There's a second on the motion.
can I,
Hold on a second, because I got this, I got to follow this process.
I'd second it.
All right, so there's a motion and a second in the discussion.
The discussion would be, will we just incorporate this, Mr. Wickman, in like, other items of business to be able to have an open dialogue during the next?
Sure.
Would that be the best way to do it, going to
Sure.
other business, whoever wants to come and speak? I don't know how we're gonna notify residents unless people are not gonna enforce it legally.
Well, this
Mr.
is-
Chairman,
Right.
And I'll be not gonna know.
Just, I'm sorry, Jenna, let me just finish quickly. So if, I have no problem with that motion, we'll just have an open discussion at the next meeting on any stakeholder policy that wants to come. Just, we won't be able to vote or act on it. It will be a strictly discussion item, you know.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that we advise the petitioner to reach out to these important stakeholders, make every effort to have them present, because that's the reason we're doing this.
So there's a motion and a second. Right now, it's just to table this particular petition for 30 days. Is that correct, Mr. Mendoza?
Yeah, that's my understanding, sir.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on that motion?
I just have a quick question. If
may I speak?
Oh, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting about Jennifer. Jennifer, go ahead.
So there's a couple items I think your board attorney needs to address here. A couple things is, can this body meet in a session outside a public hearing? Additionally, there's a time frame set out in the code of when a person makes an application to the time that their public hearing has to be, a decision has to be made. So you want to make sure you're meeting that time frame. If their application is incomplete in some way, to extend that time frame, that's another matter, but you want to make sure you're citing how the application is incomplete and why extending, having a special notice boundary or special groups is different than every other petition that comes before the board. So I think you're getting into some legalities that I have concerns about here.
So Mr. Wicklund, is by tabling this preliminary hearing, is that potentially causing a challenge to the due process?
I don't think so. Could I sit here?
Mr. Chairman.
Might merit further study, but no.
Mr. Chairman, if the application isn't complete yet due to our code requiring screen walls, it's not a complete submittal. Is that correct, Jennifer, right now anyways?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Wouldn't it be safe to say this application is not complete if we have code with screen walls and stuff, so that gives the petitioners, some time
The
to
screening
fill
is
out?
above and beyond. Nothing in your code requires that type of screening that
I
I've
thought we had
seen.
mechanical screening in our code.
Yeah, this is, you're gonna have trouble with this one for mechanical screening of this type. I would call it a gray area at best.
One thing everybody has to take into consideration is playing of the noise.
I'm talking to the mic, David.
I'm sorry. I think that all the stakeholders are gonna have to have heard the noise, produce the noise. That's important, significant. And John has the doctor. I hear.
I'll play it again. You want to hear it?
So you're gonna have to play for everybody. Unless there's one who is
But
Yes.
we would need a similar scenario and the same decibel rating put on at the application. And you would set up noise sensors on the perimeter of property that would tell you the decibel
We would
rating.
do something,
and,
we
at
would
the
do a
perimeter property.
simulation.
I just did it with Aurora and Elk Grove Village for the same thing, so that's what we set up the sound stuff.
All right, any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Either or none, Mr. Mendoza.
Ms. Brannigan,
I'm sorry, can you repeat the motion one more time? I lost it.
the motion was to, table an item and hold a study session at the next planning commission meeting.
Okay, can I ask a quick question about that study session? So if it's a study session just with us, then are the stakeholders allowed to talk? Because,
if you so allow.
oh, okay, so we give specific people allowed, okay. Yes, I support. Motion.
Dr. Hopper,
Yes.
Ms. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Rafferty,
Mr.
Mr. Rafferty, I'm so sorry.
Who knows nowadays? Yes.
Mr. Schenkin.
Yes.
President Baker.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. Could you please, sir, work with the town and make sure these things happen as soon as possible and try to coordinate all the schedules? Good luck with that. Thank you. All right, moving right along. Next up on the agenda is a public hearing PC 24-009, Development Plan Review. Nick Giorgio, I hope I said that right, of Region Contractors and proposing a development plan approval for 11,476 square foot addition to an existing 4,918 square foot CD-4 period B building, including exterior facade, parking lot expansion, landscaping, sidewalks, and stormwater detention at 620 Progress Avenue. Whoever writes that is just unbelievable. Thank you. Mr. Mendoza, you write that? Thank you for that. Help me out with what's going on here, sir.
So, this, petition is here before you for a development plan. They received, development standard variance and use variances with conditions, on both the development standard variance and the use variance for, that would impact what you're going to hear or see this evening. The development standard variances were approved with a condition that sidewalks be waived until such time that the sidewalks adjacent to the property owner, the existing property owner are installed. Brick be installed 8 feet high to match the existing brick facade on the structure, on the existing structure. And that transom windows be added, 2x4 windows be added as part of the conditions for the development standard variance. Under use variance, the use was for warehousing facility use. They've indicated, or they have put conditions on there that restrict outdoor storage, the use of, or the a parking, I'm sorry, what do they call it? A loading facility for the truck or semi-truck. And the uses be reviewed by staff and comply with the parking requirements as set forth for the use under a when applying for a business license, business registration. So they are here to present this evening the site plan, which includes lighting, landscaping, and you'll see some of those differences that were as part of the conditions, as part of the previous approval of the BZA that may not show up here, but the applicant will speak to that as well with the concessions on that. At this time, I'll also turn it over to Jennifer Barkley in case she has any additional information to add as part of her review.
Jennifer.
I can add some clarification. They are adding on to the south of the existing structure. It's 4 different units. So you see there that pitched roof, that is the addition. It'll be 4 different units. There's basically warehousing and an office space. The parking is on the west side of the building. And that would accommodate some of the uses. Like Sergio spoke to the fact that we do have concerns if high traffic volume uses go in all 4 units, how parking might work on site. Overall, they do have the landscaping for the parking area. They do have rear doors on the east side, and that is also where the AC units will be sitting as well. And they have an AC unit for each unit. As far as the front of the building, they are fixing up some of the landscaping, but not much is changing to the front of the building itself along the street. That's all I have.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for staff before we turn it over to the petitioners?
I'm sorry, I have
Yes.
a question about, and I don't know, I was sitting in on the BZA meeting, but it seems like they have met the minimum required openings. But it just seems so bare minimum, Sergio, like what, I mean, is that something that we maybe need to revisit as a town or commission, like, it just, to me, showing that a garage door is meeting your requirement for opening seems, like not enough.
That's how the code identifies openings or permissible, or identified as an opening for every 20 feet, so.
Okay, are you done?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, transition, I'm still working on those. So if there's no other questions for staff, you have one?
Mr. Chairman, Sergio, Jennifer, any reasons why the AC units aren't screened?
There's no reason they can't be screened.
They visibly can't be screened?
I said there's no reason they could not be
Okay,
screened.
okay, yeah, I don't see any screening for mechanical, for the AC, they should be screened.
Transition, okay? More?
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? You're up, sir, as the petitioner. Please state your name and address for the record.
Nick Georgiou, Region Contractors, 912 West Avenue H, Griffith, Indiana, representing the petitioner, 620 Progress LLC. Also President Ryan Turinga Engineering. As part of our overall plan commission package, we do have complete civil site drawings submitted with our package. I don't know, I just asked if we got any comments back in Sergio. I don't know at what point we would get any engineering review comments relative to that aspect. On the architectural side, obviously, it was noted the concessions given at the BZA meeting, where the rendering that's shown here is if you look at the height of the existing building, which had a brick approximately 8 feet tall, that's now being extended around the entire perimeter of the new building. We're also adding additional windows on the west elevation. It's difficult to read on there, but we indicate signage, which conforms to the square footage allowed for signage on the west elevation. I want to clarify that this is set up with a maximum of 4 potential tenants. So the parking is calculated as such with a mix of office and warehouse that would be provided and approved. Obviously, it could be 2 tenants, could be 3, but we've still accommodated that and took that into consideration in the parking mix of an office/warehouse use. We are adding additional windows, transom windows to the west elevation from screening on landscape unit. I'm sorry, on the mechanical units. I have no problem with providing landscaping screening around those comments if we can provide. As discussed, the condition, whether it's under this body or was part of the BZA approval, our owner would be fully supportive of prohibiting any kind of outdoor storage, items, piece of equipment, et cetera, et cetera. It would also stipulate by dotted in, typically we've done that on several site plans, the loading, basically a semi truck, if it had to be delivered, would back into the parking lot on the driveway side. We'd indicate where the loading, when you come off the street, so not in the street. That was a comment made concerning the earlier meeting. Obviously, the concessions on our elevations, I assume we would do this and submit it for staff review to see that it conforms with what was agreed to by the BZA. What other items do they have here? Believe I covered it. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there was a concern in the earlier from the adjacent occupant about screening or consideration. We pull up our landscaping plan. Virtually all of our landscaping is a buffer between our property and the property to the west. Really not a place I can put it, but then you see in the landscape plan, we definitely are enhancing the transition between our property and the adjacent property owner. We do have site photometrics in there. Site is tight relative to where the parking and grading is, and we're actually able to do that with site lighting or site fixtures off the building and not have to have poles that would potentially overflow in the adjacent property, which isn't required anyway, but storage isn't allowed, but that's all part of the package. So,
Yes, sir. So, you mentioned it's 4 new, let's call them bays. The existing building, is it occupied?
it is, if I have the same function as what we're proposing for the additional, there's an office space and it's storage space, storage warehouse space for the current owner.
Let me rephrase it. Is it occupied?
Yes,
Okay, so that's really 5 units then I would assume, because you have that space plus the 4 additional ones that you're, proposing.
right.
So how many folks are in that current space that's occupied as far as parking?
If there's nobody who works there and any work. There's no 8 to 5 are there, so to speak. It's accessed remotely. There's no full-time employee there. So there's one person who comes there to do maintenance and or access the items stored there.
And then, these will be specs, so they'll go out to the market, so they're just the drive-through with an office, call it a flex building. Is the trash corral gonna be for all 5 units, and is it sufficient enough for 5 units of this capacity?
Yes,
And then the truck's gonna come in there as a semi, the proposal is that he's gonna back in past 3 other buildings to get, or 3 other tenants to get to the tenant at the back,
yeah, yes, correct.
and theoretically block the point of ingress and egress. Mr. Mendoza, is there parking allowed on the street in this particular area of town?
The last time I visited the site, there is no yellow curb parking, so it is a public street and public parking is.
Because we've had truck parking issues, going into the GE plant over by the hospital.
Yeah.
So if they're successful and more people, which we hope you are, more and more people come to the town of Munster and rent space and operate their businesses there, theoretically, there could be an overflow of parking, which would push that out to the street.
And what I'm understanding is that the police actually will go visit those, trucks and tell them to locate them onto a parking lot. Because they're not designated, parking spots, are just more thoroughfares.
Yeah, since we don't know the tenants though, we don't know what kind of businesses are going to be in there. So one of these could be a call center for all we know.
So a call center would not meet the parking, specs and their business registration would be denied.
Thank you. Any other questions for the petitioner?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I noticed your dumpster enclosure is all wood. Isn't the code Sergio masonry, enclosure muster for?
Yes, the code requires that the, dumpster enclosure, match the materials of the primary structure.
So masonry on the 3 sides, and you got the gate up front.
Anything else, Mr. Rathman?
No, that's it, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Anything else for the petitioner before I open this up for public hearing?
Really have, well, I don't know questions, but I just want to say, like, I feel like anytime we propose a new building, you have an opportunity to improve the space and improve the neighborhood. That neighborhood over, I guess we can't call it, I don't know if we can call it a neighborhood, that area over there, it's eclectic, it's up and coming. We've got 3 Floyds over there doing great things. I think there's the opportunity for, better design here. As I was asking about the windows, it's clear you've met the minimum. But I just feel like, while I was sitting out there during the BZA meeting, I was just kind of scrolling through images of pool warehouses, modern architecture, I realize there are budget constraints. I realize you're meeting what your client has asked you to do. But I just feel like anytime we as architects have an opportunity to make something better, improve the space, you should push a little bit, propose something that's really nice to look at, and maybe you would get some, really great tenants. It seems like from what I heard that there were maybe only just 2 so far that had committed, and that's just my 2 cents. I know that we're not doing an architectural review, but again, I am in this spot here, so that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for the petitioner? Either none, I'm going to open this up now to the public hearing. So if you'd like to speak on this matter, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the public record. Going once, going twice, it's a full house. Bring it back to the board. Closing the public hearing to be official. So I guess I'll have a question, Sergio. I was listening to some of the BZA comments, and there was a lot of the discussion focused on the existing building and not currently meet code. Doesn't existing buildings, when there's a zoning or code change, get grandfathered in and don't have to go through the process of reallocating, just out of curiosity?
So the existing structure does not meet the current code, so can they move, or can they add to the front and meet the current code? Yes.
No,
So that's.
but aren't they grandfathered in though, because it's an old building from previous
If they're making,
construction
if they're
period?
making an addition or if they're doing an addition, no, they're not grandfathered. The structure,
Okay.
existing structure is. If they lock the structure as is, that's, yeah.
But if they're adding on to it or
It has to
renovating,
comply with the current codes.
thank you. Interesting. Okay, folks, here we are. So it's a public hearing, we closed. They're looking for the review of conditions and approval of development plan.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion based on the items that we discussed earlier regarding the screening of the mechanical units, the meeting of the code of the dumpster enclosure. Landscaping meets code right now. Obviously,
Storm.
what's that?
Storm.
Storm has to meet all stormwater, and the Tringas are making sure that it's all local codes. We're not asking for a variance or anything, but it must meet all the detention requirements in the town. As well as parking lot expansion, exterior facade based on the BZA, based on a BZA previous meeting, as conditions as well as use based off of the BZA unit, meeting. That's all I have. That's my motion. If you leave me restate it or restate it one more time.
There's a motion to which Commissioner Raffin is going to restate, so everybody understands what he's trying to
All
accomplish.
right, it's been a long night.
It is.
So, my motion is, the exterior facade based on the BZA, meeting conditions that were earlier, the parking lot expansion, being approved, landscaping, meeting the current code, sidewalks are conditional based on the adjacent properties on either side, adding sidewalks at a future date, stormwater meeting, code, as well as screening the mechanical AC units on the, I think that's the east side, as well as the dumpster enclosure on the west side, meeting the code with the same masonry materials as primary masonry materials as the building.
Tenants to meet approval. Tenants to meet approval.
And tenants to meet approval based on the earlier as well BZA requirements.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And a second discussion?
I do like Rachel's comment. I don't want to go shopping for the cheapest diamond. I want to look for the nicest diamond. So when we're looking at things, this is what we like to see in town. So.
Duly noted.
Opportunity.
So,
Any other discussion? Mr. Mendoza, you got a motion and a second?
All right, Ms. Brannigan,
Yes.
Dr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Ms. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Pass me.
Mr. Raffin,
yes.
Mr. Shinman,
Yes.
President Baker.
Yes. Councilman?
Back to me.
Oh, Mr. Peterson.
I abstain.
All right, motion passes. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Try to press it up a little, will you please? Next up is the findings of facts, to which I guess we have none. Next is the continued discussion items, other business. Nominations and appointment of plat committee per SCO 26-251 and IC 36-7-4-701E.
You got that in the back here?
Yeah, you know what, please don't, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, say it again.
So, Mr. Mendoza, please help on what's this continued discussion, other business, please.
So the plat commission is identified in your subdivision control ordinance. Essentially, the rights that are given to the plat committee come down from the state legislation and your state codes. In this case, the subdivision control ordinance requires or allows for up to 3 members of the planning commission to serve on the PAC committee. The PAC committee essentially reviews residential lots, not to exceed 2 lots or create more than 2 lots, essentially either combine 2 lots or create 2 lots for residential uses only.
How often lately is that committee been meeting?
We have not met, there's been no application presented to us for residential 1 or 2 lot subdivision.
Thank you. Who's currently sits on it? There's another question. They all, me, I,
Rachel and I,
Yeah. I just saw Rachel and Roland's name on there.
and then staff was on there, right?
Well, yeah, but there's, I know there was supposed to be a 33 commission members.
I think the last one we had about was that,
Amy's
on
house.
Cray, right?
Yeah.
There, yeah, which was turning out really cool.
really?
Yeah, I like it.
Oh,
You don't like it?
no, absolutely.
Well, what's going on?
They combined 2 lots on Cray and made it into 1 house. Kind of combined the house with the connection.
Did they rebuild the house?
The 2 structures pretty much stayed the same and they kind of rebuilt the entire facade to include a pass-through between the 2 houses, almost like a gangway, but it's livable space.
I'm not with that, Jackson.
You had one in Westlake too.
It's unique, let's put it that way. So, I mean, moving right along, so nominations, is it usually the three of the 4 citizens?
It doesn't designate whether it's citizens or council, so,
And basically,
It just
it's a recommendation to the planning commission for the following meeting.
yes.
But it still comes back here. It's just
Right.
next to meeting that you do 15 minutes before the BZA meeting starts.
Well, who's on it? That's who I nominate.
Next meeting. And it all comes back here anyways. Extra meeting.
Yeah, it really didn't take that much time. I mean, it was 15 minutes that we have.
I think I've done it twice in
Yeah.
10 years.
Okay.
Years I haven't done it.
All right, so let's move along. Let's nominate somebody and appoint them. Let's go. I can't do it, so somebody do it, please.
I'll nominate Roland again. And can I nominate myself?
Sure.
I enjoyed doing it.
Oh, I'll second that.
How about you, Jen? Jen, do you want to do it?
Jump in.
Loving it.
There you go. There you go. So there's 3 nominations, so.
I'll second.
In a second, any discussion?
No, let's vote.
Either done, let's vote.
Ms. Brand,
Yes.
Dr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yeah.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Rappin.
You don't have like 10 meetings lined up coming up.
No, we have, this was an inquiry,
I just wanted to check.
but, and I want to make sure we had this covered, when the inquiry came in.
I feel like I was setting myself up.
Yeah.
No, we went for it 2 months ago and they haven't followed up, but just want to be prepared. Mr. Rappin,
Yes.
Mr. Shinton,
Yes.
and President Baker.
Yes. Next regularly scheduled business meeting of the Town Planning Commission is September 10th, 2024. Entertain a motion to
I'll
adjourn.
make that motion.
I'll second.
And a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All against. Thank you very much for helping Munster be a better place to live.
Burning my dog. Recording is down.
Can't bullshit a bullshitter, but
Mr. Peterson.
that's still on the record.
Playing at the end.
82, 3.
What is-
Oh, no, what instrument?
The piccolo, I played trombone.